Nukleusnak a C-portjából a motorból tápolom vissza. Jöjjön! Hogy én a motornak a C-portjából szoktam tápolni. Persze nézőket. Hát eléggé.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe it's not so clear from the weather, but we are in Croatia. Welcome to Automotodrom Grobnik, and we are about to start a brand new season of the Eastern European TCR Championship alongside all the other racing series that we're going to be witnessing this weekend. We've got Renault Clio's coming up, we've got some single-seaters coming up, we've also got a Twingo Cup race coming up later on, which I'm actually going to be a part of, but that's for later. That's going to be a lot of fun. But right now, as you can see right behind me on the starting grid already, the cars getting ready for the first race of the weekend. It's slippery, honestly, and this race has already been claimed as a wet race because it was raining, well, heavily yesterday. Not so much today, but the track still isn't dry, and that means that it should be a lot of fun. It's drying up quite quickly, so the crossover point between wet tires and slicks, well, could be something that we need to take care of and we need to keep an eye on. Let's start walking towards the cars, waiting already on the starting grid. This is our pole sitter, Adam Colt. You also know that name very well because, of course, he is our reigning champion of the series. Adam, hi. I was gonna say good morning, but actually good afternoon right now. Brand new season. Well, come to Croatia, they said. It's gonna be sunny, they said, but it isn't. So how are you feeling before the first race of the new season?
It's nice to see you in the race overall. Yeah. At first, I have to say, I like the track. It's really nice. I really enjoyed to drive here, and the weather is a bit tricky, but it's same for all of us. So we will see how the race will go.
It is not raining anymore, maybe a few drops in the sky, but you've already had a chance to see the track in the reconnaissance lap when you were coming to the grid. Is it wet? Is it dry? Is it somewhere in the middle? How do you see it?
Most of the track is dry. We have dry tires, the slicks on the car, I believe all of us. But there are still some puddles somewhere, so we have to be careful, especially in the first lap.
Okay, so keep it safe but have fun. That's Adam Colt for you, our reigning champion. And let's make our way on the other side of the starting grid. Teammate from Janik Motorsport, Jiří Zbožinek, joining him on the front row. So that means it is a front row lockout for Janik from Sternberg. Jiří Zbožinek, we're going to try and see whether we can squeeze a few words out of him. Hi, Jiří Zbožinek. Hi, Jiří. Starting the new season on the front row. So that's a great view ahead. The track's still damp and slippery. How do you feel before the race?
I feel good, but a little bit nervous. But I want to make a good getaway, and let's see how I can get from here.
Okay, have fun and stay safe. That's Jiří Zbožinek for you. We're gonna shut the door back. And we'll just keep on going through the grid a little bit. Let me get back my starting grid here. We've got Franjo Dubreta, one of the local guys, opening the row number 2 in his Cupra Leon. Alongside him from the Czech Republic, Petr Čížek in his Cupra Leon, of course the newer generation. And then we have got the local star, Žarko Kněgo, in P5, currently still in discussions with his engineer. In the final minutes, we're gonna have to leave the grid very soon. So let me see if I can jump in very quickly. Žarko, hi, you're the local hero, starting P5 on home soil, but the track is still damp from all the raining. How do you feel before the first race?
Yeah, unfortunately the qualify didn't went well as I was looking forward, but it's P5 and I expect a good race. The track is semi-wet, the most difficult conditions, but for me it's the same like for the other drivers.
Thank you so much, have a good one. Žarko Kněgo on home soil, hello. And we're gonna have to leave the grid now. Martin Kadlečík, also one of the guys that we need to keep an eye on because he's definitely going to make the life of Adam Colt difficult this year. And he's starting in his Audi RS3, prepared by Aditis Racing Team, this time only on row number 3. But we can expect this guy definitely to be moving further up during the race. And it's going to be a good one. So let's get ready for the season opener. Bravo, ide. Full gas, ajde. Kamera snima. Snima kamera.
Vidím Richarda Krále na posledním místě a jde směrem ke mně. Co je s ním?
So cars are getting ready for the start of the opening race of the 2026 season of the Eastern European TCR. We're going to make track is pretty much dry now. We are still expecting a few drops here and there, but nothing too dramatic, so we should stay already on slicks, but there are still some wet patches. The track is still rather slippery, as we saw directly on the grid, so we're gonna have to be careful for this opening race of the season, because of course, yeah, the grip levels aren't where you might expect them. My name Pavel Fabry, I'm your commentator for the, I was gonna say for the weekend, but not really for all of it. There is going to be quite an interesting twist a little later on, because as you saw me on the grid in my pair of racing overalls, I've been given the chance to actually try my hand at racing as well, to actually know a little bit more about what I'm talking about, which is great. So when the Renault Twingo race is coming up a little later on, it should gonna get a little more exciting for me. If it can get even more exciting after the TCR race, because that's always the one bringing you the action. But yeah, we've got packed program for the entire weekend. For example, Renault Clio Cup, one of the biggest grids we've had for years. Not so many cars as previously in Austria, but still great grid. And the qualifying just finished. There are also so many fantastic drivers that we're going to be seeing on the racetrack. But now, let's get ready back for the Eastern European TCR. That's where we are starting our program. The cars are getting back onto the start and finish straight at the end of their formation lap. Adam Colt claiming his spot at the head of the entire grid. We have got his colleague Jiří Zbožínek right alongside Franjo Dubreta, Petr Čížek, sharing row number 2 in third and fourth. Behind them, Žarko Knego and Martin Kadlečík. Luka Fabiancic in seventh from Niko Pulic. Bojan Milkovic in ninth from Robert Pravdic and Radam Adamek. Completing the grid in 11th. Everybody back after the formation lap. We see the green flag in the air and the red lights will go on in a moment. There they are. The red lights are off and away we go, and fantastic start it seems to be from Žarko Knego, who's immediately cutting across the track, but it's going to be a big battle into the first corner. Jiří Zbožínek taking the top spot off the hands of his teammate Adam Colt into first corner. Martin Kadlečík sending it around the outside. That's a very brave move, slight touch here and there. Petr Čížek dropping down the order, but Martin Kadlečík made a fantastic getaway and immediately gained a couple of places. I believe that must have been Franjo Dubreta in the mix together with them, and Luka Fabiancic also trying to get there, but it is Jiří Zbožínek leading the way from Adam Colt. We currently have the cars away from the side, but let's wait for them to get back. There they are, Jiří Zbožínek leading from Adam Colt, presumably. Žarko Knego on the home soil immediately up to third. That was a great start by the Croatian driver. Martin Kadlečík up to fourth, and there's already a change of the order. between the first two Yannick Motorsport liveried Elantras, because it is now Adam Kout back in the lead, and this is Martin Kadlecik already troubling Žarko Knego from behind, trying to have a look left and right. We've also got Petr Čížek trying to see whether there is anything for him to be had at the party table. Robert Pravdic in trouble after the first lap, and this is already a maneuver from Martin Kadlecik. Žarko Knego finding himself opening the door way too much, and Martin Kadlecik is a guy who needs no second invitations, so immediately up to third he goes, and he is starting chasing after the leading Elantras. This is exactly what I told you at the grid. We need to keep an eye on this very talented guy, because he was never going to stay in sixth forever, and that materialized pretty much immediately right after the start. Žarko Knego now down in fourth, defending his position from Petr Čížek. He dropped a couple of places at the start, so he will also want to move up ahead. Car number 44, that is Niko Pulic in his Hyundai Elantra, making his way around the hairpin at the back of the track. And there we go, Martin Kadlecik, target locked. This part of the track still seems to be rather wet. Drivers need to be careful, rather tiptoe around those corners, find the grip, because they are already on slicks. And you can see exactly why, because this part of the track is already widely dry, and the wet tires would really not be suitable at all. They would overheat extremely quickly. So Kout leading from Zbožínek, but Kout already trying to open up some of the lead, because he knows when this battle is done and dusted, he might get into trouble. And Martin Kadlecik really losing no time at all, fighting Jiří Zbožínek. So at the end of lap 2, he's already got him. He's up to second. So those were great opening 2 laps by the young Czech driver, who started his career actually on computers, on sims. He was representing the Czech Republic in the FIA Motorsport Games a couple of years back, and then he worked his way through the ranks of motorsport. He started in the Twingo Cup, and then he absolutely dominated the Renault Clio Cup. During our weekends, you may remember that all-white Renault Clio, that was still the Mark IV class, a Mark IV generation, and he won absolutely everything that he set his foot into. Now he's up to second in his Audi RS3 and trying to chop off some of the time of the lead of Adam Kout. Interestingly, across the line it says there was only 1 second between them, which I don't really think was the case, because if I look at my live timing screen, I actually see the difference of 3.6 seconds, which would be a lot more fitting to what we see. And hang on a second, there is a car driving really rather slowly. Is that Kout? Yes, it is. It seems to be that there is some sort of technical issue for the leading Hyundai, and that's a sporting disaster for the crowning champion, for the reigning champion Adam Kout, who was leading the race on the opening 2 laps, and now there is a switch in the lead, and it will be Martin Kadlecik into the first place from 6th on the grid, while Žarko Knego is defending hard from Petr Čížek. Beautiful scrap between these two, but Adam Kout will now enter the pit lane. He's already done that, and something isn't entirely right in the world of Adam Kout, but Petr Čížek fighting his way through. That was a beautiful move on Žarko Knego. Petr Čížek taking no prisoners on his way up the field. And he is then effectively actually moving up to second. So what was once a fight for 5th is now turning into being second on the road. So not the best of starts for Petr Čížek. He dropped from 4th to 6th. But since then he's been moving back up the order. And it's coming to fruition, because he's now up to second, as he beautifully dealt with the local driver Žarko Knego. Behind them it is Franjo Dubreta. We had him on row number 2. He also dropped a couple of places and is now in 4th. sorry, fifth, because we've got Kadlecik and Zbožinek in first and second. So I beg your pardon. Actually, Petr Cížek moving not up to second, but third, of course. In my head, I accidentally lost both of the Yannick Motorsport Elantras, but that's luckily not the case. The other one's still on the road and still working nicely. So it is Jiří Zbožinek now shadowing Martin Kadlecik. But I'm suspecting that once you give this guy the leading position, he's just not going to give it away that easily, if at all. However, Jiří Zbožinek actually set the fastest lap of the race, 1:30.7. He was a whole quarter of a second faster than Kadlecik ahead of him. So that's still bound to be interesting. There is 1 second between them, and we've only about done first 7 minutes of the race. So round about 1/3 of the race behind. And what is going on with Adam Kolt? We very unfortunately lost him. He drove into the pits, and from what I can see on my live timing screen, he is still there. This is the fight for third, for the remaining step of the podium. Petr Cížek currently holding it in his hands. Through the track's undulations and bumps into the first braking zone. All the way around through the never-ending left-hander, and now the quick S's. We've got a nice drone view as well, still quite wet here. And there is Adam Kolt. The bonnet is up, and Adam is already out of the car. So that's one sporting disaster actually. But this is simply motorsport. Yeah, sometimes car just gives way, and unfortunately that now happened to the reigning champion. So Adam is going to have to try tomorrow again. However, the order for the starting grid for race number 2 is always dictated by race 1 results, with certain number of positions reversed. We of course don't know yet how many. That will only be drawn after this race by race 1 winner. Currently is Martin Kadlecik, who is the closest one to it. 1:30.6. He's just set the fastest lap of the race. He already set it the lap before, but right now he pretty much mirrored the exact same lap time. On his best time previously, he did 1:30.623 on the previous lap. I mean, on the last lap, he did 1:30.630. So just about 7 thousandths of a second difference between his two fastest laps. He's currently being very consistent. There is Radim Adamek being lapped by Jiří Zbožinek. We had one of the Adidas racing cars driving really slowly. But make no mistake, that was not our race leader. That would of course be yet another big disappointment if we lost another race leader. Zbožinek's still trying to stay together with Kadlecik. But Martin Kadlecik is already gaining massively. On the last lap he was, well, about 0.8 of a second faster. So there's 2.5 seconds between the first two drivers already. Žarko Knego, really a local hero, also a local promoter, and he's very much grown together and been synonymous to Croatian motorsport, helping a lot with the entire racing weekend taking place, because we do not only have, of course, the TCR racing, the Clio Cup racing, the Twingos and so on. We've got local Croatian championships, where I believe it's his younger brother also taking part. And you could see the Euromarine logos all around the track. There are, for example, big tents right on the entrance to the circuit. So Žarko's company again being present here. And he's always really strong on his home soil, from what I remembered. Currently he is in P4. For some reason there is Adam Coat in your graphics in P4, but that of course isn't true. So there is some sort of slight glitch. The car number 68 of course already out of the race, having run into technical trouble. Back into the pits, and Yannick Motorsport will need to figure out the root cause for the problem, if they've already not done that. Maybe they already know, and they're gonna have to fix it for tomorrow's race. But this is your race leader, Martin Kadlecik, currently making his way around the first sector of the track. Absolutely superb so far. It's also a little bit pity, of course, that we lost Adam Coat through technical issues, because I would have wondered, would actually Martin had enough pace to catch up with Adam and fight for the race win right on the track, because I believe he may have had. However, that's something that we will now never know for race number 1. Either way, he still had to make it from P5 to P2, which he did, to be able to gain from the technical issues that Adam Coat unfortunately ran into. 10 minutes left on the clock. So technically we are entering the final 2/5 of the race, with Martin Kadlecik still holding on to a really nice pace, 1:30.7 on the previous laps. He's really being very, very consistent, and managing to nurse his tyres nicely. I believe this would be Radim Adamek, the other Adidas Racing's Audi that we had in our view. And this is Žarko Knego. And there is Robert Pravdic in his Audi. But I believe he may already be a lap down. He had some issues right at the start of the race, because he lost a lot of time on the opening lap. And is now also running around rather slowly. Either way, Grobnik leading. On the previous lap he did 1:31.4. I believe there might still even be some drops of rain here and there. Yeah, I'm just looking out of the window and that's what I can see as well. So it's raining very slightly. So the track condition still not perfect, and it will probably never get to it over the remainder of this race. So the grip is largely there, but drivers still have to be careful. Ooh, and we have got one of the cars exiting the track. Actually, there it is. That's the back part of the track, and that would be one of the I-30s. That might actually be... Is that Franjo Dubreta? No, it's car number 703, and that would be Luka Fabiancic, who actually lost it a little bit on the wetter part of the track. That's what we've been saying, because now you can see it actually nicely, that mostly the track is dry. There are still wet patches, quite a lot of them actually. If you look at the start and finish straight, you really have to find your way around, and then it's mostly dry. But now we are here with the race leader, 7.5 minutes left on the clock, and we're going to get into the back S's. Unfortunately, we weren't able to stay with Martin, because what he was about to enter was still the wettest part of the track. And that's where Luka Fabiancic lost it momentarily, ran through the gravel trap, ran through the grass, but back onto the track. So he made it, he rejoined the race. Everything is still fine with him. He, of course, only lost, around about 5 seconds there, because all the other guys around him are doing 1:34s, and he did 1:39.4 on the previous lap. So I would assume around about 5 to 6 seconds loss through that mistake. But no position lost. Martin Grobnik has already managed to extend his lead, I beg your pardon, to over 5.5 seconds. Now they are running across the finish line once again. A couple of laps still left in it. We are circulating around this track at the pace of around 91, 92 seconds per lap. So we may have, 4 laps on our hands, I would assume. So even Martin now dropped his pace slightly. He doesn't need to be pushing so much anymore. This is still where it's kind of wet, and that left-hander, it's not really a simple corner. It looks like it from the drone, but actually if you drive the track, the corners are really, really heavily cambered. It doesn't appear so from the TV screens, because it looks a lot flatter than it actually is if you're driving, and you've got to make use of these, cambered corners, because they help you turn in, and you can carry a lot more speed through the corners, which is nice and handy. It is, of course, putting a little more load onto the outside rear tire usually, but in those 25-minute races that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Martin Grobnik extending his lead to nearly 7 seconds. 1:31.8 on the previous lap. Jiří Zbožínek 1:32.4, and that is actually creating quite an interesting situation, because behind him we have Petr Čížek, who did 1:31.4. They actually did a lap time exactly 1 second from one another. So Jiří Zbožínek did 1:32.458, Petr Čížek 1:31.458, which means that Petr managed to be a whole second faster on the previous lap, and he's already only about 1.3 seconds away from second place. So this is spicing up quite nicely, towards the end of the race with 4 minutes left on the clock. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, because Petr Cížek has already caught up with Jiří Zbožínek, and he is already entering the attack mode, I would assume. Starting to read his opponent. He's still got a handy few minutes, so a couple of laps left. I would assume that we might still be able to do 3 laps. Yes, with Martin Kadlecík now entering the start and finish straight. Yes, we will have time for 3 more. And 3 more, that is a lot of overtaking opportunities if you are right together with your opponent, which Petr Cížek definitely is. And he is all over the back end of that Elantra. Look at that. And he is immediately launching an attack. Of course, here into the first corner, he's going to take the outside line. That was more of a look rather than a full send. Petr was rather trying to do his line through the first corner, while Jiří Zbožínek may have already been going slightly defensive. Now through the never-ending left-hander we go. Petr Cížek will now try and look for opportunities. Ooh, and we've got one of the cars making a mistake. That would have been, again, Luka Fabiancic. Is he going to make it out of the gravel? Because if not, then we are in trouble. But luckily, Luka Fabiancic back onto the track. He's lost a place to Bojan Milkovic, but no more than that. But let's go back to the fight for second, because that was really an interesting one. I mean, yeah, we did have a car off the track, but what is happening between Jiří Zbožínek and Petr Cížek? Because we had Petr Cížek already all over. Ooh, and we've got no issues. I saw one of the slower driving cars, but that was no drama. Let's try and find the guys fighting for second. This is Martin Kadlecík, our race leader, with 2 minutes left on the clock. He's entering the penultimate lap of the race. But what is happening in the fight between second and third? That is bound to be an interesting one. Jiří Zbožínek still somehow holding on to it, but there's like 0.2 of a second between them. Really, let's try and get back to that shot and into the fight between the second and third place, because that one is properly hot right now. There they are, and Petr Cížek is already through. Petr Cížek has already done it, and he has found his way past Jiří Zbožínek. It must have happened somewhere around first 2 corners, because across the line Jiří Zbožínek was still ahead, but then they had like 1/4 of a second maximum, not even that. Less than 0.2 of a second across the line when they were entering the penultimate lap of the race, so they were already locked in a fight with one another, and Petr Cížek actually made it through. So hats off to Petr. That was a great drive, and having lost a couple of places at the start, he made up for it really nicely and worked his way through onto the podium, and not only that, but also into second. So he has managed to deal with a guy who has started from the front row with Jiří Zbožínek. And 35 seconds left on the clock right now as we are re-entering the start-finish straight for the final time to open a new lap. So Martin Kadlecík on to another one. And so there we go. He was losing a couple of tenths in the free practice. He didn't really get the best of qualifyings, only put his car into 6th on the grid. But in this race, he's been nothing but superb. He was very quick at the start, made a great launch, great getaway, sent it around the outside into the first corner, won a couple of places, and then just kept climbing. And as the icing on the cake, that cherry on top was, of course, the technical issues of Adam Kolt, who unfortunately had to retire from the race very early on, and that effectively handed the race lead to this man, who then never gave it away to anyone else ever since. And Martin Kadlecik, he is already going to re-enter the start and finish straight for the final time. There he goes. Martin Kadlecik flashing his headlights. And he takes victory in the opening race of the 2026 Eastern European TCR, with Petr Čížek also being visibly happy. That was a great race from Petr Čížek, who's coming second on the track, bringing it home onto the podium. What a race that was for Petr Čížek as well. Jiří Zbožinek completing the podium in third, but I would assume that Jiří Zbožinek would have hoped for a lot more, having actually taken the lead into the first corner at the start of this race. Žarko Kněgo coming home fourth on his home soil, of course, as the leading driver from the Croatian guys. However, missing out on podium, that never feels exactly perfect, but it's a solid opening result into the season for Žarko Kněgo. Franjo Dubreta in fifth, then Niko Pulic in sixth, Bojan Milkovic P7, Luka Fabiancic in P8, Robert Pravdic in 9th, Radim Adamek in 10th to complete the top 10. And we unfortunately lost our pole sitter Adam Coate to technical trouble. We're going to have to figure out what happened, and we're going to have to hope and wish Adam that the same trouble do not come his way again this weekend in race number 2, which is of course on program for tomorrow. So let me just check that very briefly. Should be on program tomorrow at 12:15. The race number 2, of course, with no separate qualifying for race number 2, because, as is the case usually in the TCR world, the starting grid for race number 2 is dictated by the results of race number 1, with a certain number of positions reversed, and it is going to be Martin Kadlecik, our first winner of 2026, who is gonna draw from the hat to see how far he's going to drop. And that means, of course, how many positions are going to get reversed for the starting grid of race number 2. So that was a pretty interesting one to open the season with. Now we're going to take a little lunch break in our program, but we're going to be back with more races later on. So the first 3 guys, they are now coming back to the pits. They, of course, have to get to the weighbridge. So the marshals just tried to navigate them correctly. They may have been expecting that they would go under the podium. Well, not exactly under the podium. The podium is at the back in the paddock. But the cars need to be weighed and scrutinized, of course, first, to determine that no tricks and games were taking place. And this is, of course, happy father, happy son, happy girlfriend as well. Look at that. This is your winner of race number 1. Fantastic to see that. And of course, the entire Additives Racing team. It wasn't really going exactly their way up until now, but the race number 1 is a great reward for their work, and of course for the talent that this young guy possesses. What a drive that was. I mean, yes, there was luck involved, as it needs to be a lot of times in motorsport. And the biggest challenger, Adam Coate, was eliminated from the race very early on. So we're never going to know what would have happened if. But, you know, there are no if so buts in motorsport. Simply this happens and it counts towards the results. So Yannick Motorsport, they need to take a look at the Elantra, take a look at what happened and fix that for tomorrow if they want to collect the points that they feel they deserve. And we're going to see the reigning champion, Adam Coate, back together with us tomorrow. So we're just waiting for the results to be displayed, and then that will be it for race number 1 here from Grobnik to open the Eastern European TCR season for 2026. And yeah, looking at the happy man. There are the victorious smiles from Martin Kadlecik. This is what we love to see.
Most tett egy kis idő, mert igen, ez most itt